This is Dharma Drops with your host, Rebecca Warfield. This podcast is a little bit about yoga, a little bit about life, and a little bit about whatever. And just as a warning, this podcast is unscripted, so that means I might regret a few things that I say. But hey, maybe I'll say some pretty awesome stuff too. Remember, these are musings, not truths. Buckle up, giddy up, because here we go. Cheers, Dharma Drops listeners. This is your Dharma Mini Drops episode for Wednesday, April 29th, 2020. And I'm your host of Dharma Drops podcast, Rebecca Warfield. And I'm here chilling with a cup of coffee. I wonder what you are drinking. Look, if you're like me, you're drinking coffee in the morning, water during the day, maybe another cup of coffee in the afternoon, and then drinking, if you know what I mean, at night. If you don't drink, that's totally fine. I respect and support everyone's decisions to drink or not drink. But look, this pandemic is just going to have to end soon because there is no reason I need to have a beer every single night. In fact, maybe this is just my calling to not have a beer every single night. But hey, we do the best that we can. So again, this is Dharma Drops podcast. For those of you tuning in for the first time, or maybe you're just listening to this for the second or third time and you don't know what the hell is going on, me either. I have no idea. I'm just here talking and figuring it out as I go. But on Wednesdays, I put out a Dharma mini drop episode, which is about a 15 to 30 minute-ish episode, usually just me. Sometimes there's a guest, or 1 week someone posted or provided a guided meditation. But for the most part, the Wednesday episodes are just me giving some weekly inspiration, a little bit of food for thought that relates to yoga, life, whatever, all the things that we talk about on Dharma Drops. Then every other Friday, I post a longer episode, a full-length episode that's usually around an hour, hour and a half. That is with a guest and me. And those are really sort of the heart of Dharma Drops podcast. But the reason I only put out one every other week is it's just a lot of work to get people to be on the show, to schedule, to edit, to put out that much content. So the mini drops are really an opportunity to hold us over until the full-length episodes come out. So Wednesdays, short episodes, every other Friday, full-length episodes. But outside the podcast, there's always all sorts of stuff going on around Dharma Drops. So I'm going to give you the updates before we get into this week's episode, which is 3 ways to Ayurvedically prepare for spring. Because look, spring has sprung, my allergies have sprung, the sun is shining, and I'm sunburned. So it is time to talk about how we can prepare for spring. But I just wanted to give you a few updates about things happening around Dharma Drops because there's lots of stuff going on. First and foremost, one of the things that I am trying to do, particularly right now during the coronavirus pandemic, is build more opportunity for us to have one-on-one community time. I have provided a lot of experiences and content and events and all sorts of things on Dharma Drops over the last year or so that have been asynchronous or self-paced, if you will. But while we're all at home feeling a little disconnected from each other, I am working on building more content that helps us build a little more real-time connection. So with that in mind, I'm really excited to announce that I am offering the first Dharma Drops at-home day retreat. It's called To Gather at Home. And I'm so clever. To gather is T-O, one word. Gather is a second word, like gather, G-A-T-H-E-R. And then home is with a capital O and a capital M because I'm so creative. But To Gather at Home is a half-day at-home yoga retreat that we can participate in together. Because I know a lot of times with yoga retreats, we expect to go to exotic places and do all these wild, adventurous things. And that stuff is really great, but we just can't do it right now. But the truth of the matter is, we don't ever have to leave our homes, and we never have to leave our hearts to experience the benefits of yoga and self-inquiry. So this is really a time for us to retreat together in our own homes and in our own hearts, which is a phrase that I got from Bill Mahoney that's just so sweet, but that's really what it is. It's a retreat into yourself, with yourself, and as a community on May 9th from 9 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So let me just give you a breakdown of what the retreat schedule is so you can get a full picture of what we'll be doing. So from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we will partake in a group all levels vinyasa yoga practice on Zoom. Options will be available for all abilities and all body types. Then after class, we'll have a 15-minute break so you can get it together, change your clothes, do whatever you need to do. From 10:15 to 11 a.m., we'll do a little bit of guided meditation and journaling. And then from 11 to 12, there'll be a lunch break. Now, you can go do whatever you want for your lunch break if you have things at home to take care of, but the Zoom room will be open for community meals. So if you wanted to just hang out and share a meal with each other, you can do that. Then from 12 to 1, we'll have a community Dharma talk and discussion. So in short, this is a time where we will just really have group discussion. I like Dharma talks where there's a teacher, sharing his or her insight, but I think the most powerful way that we can learn is together. So it won't just be me sharing all my so-called knowledge to the world. It'll be all of us sharing our knowledge with each other. Then from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m., there'll be a 1-hour restorative yoga practice. Again, options for all abilities and body types will be provided. And then we'll wrap things up from 2 to 2:30 with the closing ceremony. So it's going to be really sweet. It'll all be done online through Zoom so we can be together and have a day of retreating in our homes and in our hearts together. Again, that's May 9th from 9 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's the day before Mother's Day. So this could be a really good Mother's Day gift for yourself or someone else. And it's only $45. So that's a lot cheaper than a regular yoga retreat that requires you to pay thousands of dollars and fly across the world. So I hope you can join us on May 9th. If you want to register, just head over to dharmadropspodcast.com and there's a link at the top. You'll see it says courses and events. Just click that link and then you'll see the To Gather at Home information there. I hope you can join us. Also, Angela David, who you probably know from 2 episodes of Dharma Drops podcast, she is offering a free series for healthcare professionals called Healing for Healthcare Professionals. And you can go to the Dharma Drops virtual studio and sign up for free. This is for all healthcare providers anywhere in the world. And she is curating a series of classes that are really designed to bring healing, ease, and some relaxation and mindfulness back into the lives of healthcare professionals during the coronavirus pandemic and beyond. So you can go to dharmadropspodcast.com, click virtual studio, and you can sign up for the on-demand studio in there. You'll get the whole series for free. You'll see it there and you can enjoy it. And that content is there for you for life. If you're not a healthcare provider, please share that information with the healthcare providers in your life. It's a great gift that we can give each other. In terms of things in the shop, look, last week I was telling you how much I like the crystal eye pillow. Here's the deal. I just scored some more crystal eye pillows. So I only had the tiger's eye, I can't even say that, tiger's eye pillow. It's hard to say. Last week. This week I have amethyst and a rose quartz eye pillow. So these are eye pillows that are filled with crystals to give us that healing energy. But what I really like about them, energetic stuff aside, is that they're heavy, they're cooling, they feel really good. So now you can choose between tiger's eye, rose quartz, or amethyst. Plus, I added some new bolsters and blankets to this site that are so cute. I'm practically going to die. They are beachy inspired prints and they're really adorable. So you can check all of those out at dharmadropspodcast.com in the shop. See, the problem with selling all this stuff is I want all of it. I want one of every bolster. I want one of every blanket. I want one of every eye pillow. I don't even know what I'm going to do. Before I know it, I'm going to have a house full of yoga props. Okay. That's it for the shop. In terms of things happening on the blog, we have blogs coming out all week long. Right now, I have about 3 to 4 articles coming out a week from the writing team at Dharma Drops. The latest article is from Gabby Merides, and it's about how to deal with stress when everything feels overwhelming. Look, I think we all know a little bit about feeling a little overwhelmed right now. So head over to the blog and check that one out, and there will be more coming throughout the week as usual. But enough of this business. Let's get into 3 ways to Ayurvedically prepare for spring. Before I get too deep into this, I do want to note that there's a full-length episode. I don't know what number it is. It's early Dharma Drops, like single-digit episode Dharma Drops with Logan Wagenseller. It's called Shootin' the Ayurvedic Shiitake with Logan Wagenseller. And she spends a lot of time talking about what Ayurveda is and how we can think about it in our lives. So if you want a more comprehensive overview of Ayurveda, I'd recommend heading into whatever app that you listen to podcasts on and check out that episode. episode. But in short, Ayurveda is the science or the study of life. The prefix of the word Ayurveda, A-Y-U-R, means life, and Veda, V-E-D-A, means knowledge. So it's the knowledge of life, the science of life, the study of life. And in particular, what we are doing is studying our own lives. And now this is a pretty big concept, and Ayurveda looks at our bodies, the way we live our lives, our relationships, how we exercise. I mean, if we're talking about our life, it's looking at the whole 9 yards of our lives. But the way that I like to contextualize this, because it's sort of the easiest to digest, is looking at the relationship between our bodies and the elements. I think that's the easiest way to think about it. Because according to the Ayurvedic study, the same elements that make all of nature, that make all of the universe, also make us. So what's happening environmentally, what's happening in the earth, what's happening in nature is also happening within us. And yes, nature can get out of balance, and so can we. So what we do then in the Ayurvedic practice is we work on finding balance and harmony within our bodies. And the ancient Ayurvedic practitioner often worked with the body because if the body doesn't feel good, if the body is not at ease, if it's filled with dis-ease, it's a little bit or a lot bit harder for us to deal with the bigger parts of our lives. And traditionally that meant the spiritual part of life. But we know this just in general. If you have a stomach ache, it's hard to concentrate at work. If you have a headache, it's hard to sit down and read a book. If you're not feeling good in your body, you're not showing up for your life. So the Ayurvedic study is an opportunity for us to study our bodies, to study our lives, so we can show up fully and more presently in everything else that we do. So, that's like my, 1 to 2 minute quick down and dirty guide to what Ayurveda is. But let's talk about this in relationship to spring. In the Ayurvedic study, there are 3 doshas or states of being or constitutions, if you will. So let's just think about the dosha that we're in right now, which is kapha dosha. Kapha dosha is generally, it's like late winter, early spring, and it's associated with the elements of earth and water. They're really heavy qualities. So for some places, this is a very cold time of year. Not in Wilmington, North Carolina. It's hot as shit outside, right? It always feels so hot here to me in general. Everyone living here probably thinks I'm wrong, but I'm right. But it generally, for a lot of places, this is a very cold time of year. And that kind of makes sense, right? Because it's associated with earth and water, these heavy, slow qualities. And that's what happens in winter. Things get cold, things freeze over, things slow down, things get heavy. That nature accumulates, right? So all these things start to happen that create this earthy, heavy, water-like element. And now the study of Ayurveda is 5,000 years old. So I am skipping a ton of stuff that is related to this study. If you want more information about this, again, you can check out that podcast episode. And in the show notes for this episode on the Dharma Drops website, I'll have some resources for you, some books you can check out that will maybe give you some more information about this, because we don't have time today on a mini drop episode to talk about all of the doshas. But in terms of the kapha dosha, so if it's associated with earth and water, what we want to do to find balance is bring in the opposite qualities. So if we think about this on a vertical spectrum, earth and water are at the bottom, right? Because they're the heaviest. The opposite qualities then on that same vertical spectrum are all the way at the top, which would be space and air. So then when we bring those two qualities together, it meets in the middle of that vertical spectrum where we can find balance. So during this time of year, during the kapha dosha, during springtime, when things are maybe cold, they're feeling a little heavy, you might be feeling congested, there's a lot of wetness and stickiness, right? Snot, those sorts of things. What we want to do is find balance by attracting the opposite qualities. Now, this gets tricky because in the Ayurvedic teachings, they remind us that often we are drawn to the very things that throw us off balance. So if you are feeling a lot of that kapha energy, you're probably wanting to do more things like, eat heavy foods, maybe do slower exercise that is a little less intense. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It just might not be the most balancing for your energy right now. So with that in mind, what I'd like to do today in this episode is give you 3 ways to find some balance in this springtime kapha dosha. And I think the number one way that we can think about this, no matter what, if it's in our bodies, in our minds, in our breath, in our homes, our relationships, is when we are bringing in the qualities of space and air, what we're actually doing is reducing accumulation. Because again, if earth and water are at the bottom of that vertical spectrum, they're heavy, they're dense, we need to clear out that accumulation to make room for space, to make room for air. And really what that does is it gives us room for flow in our lives, which is an easy or a nice way to think about balance. So one of the easiest ways that I think about this time of year, and I do think we feel a natural calling to this, is to declutter. Because again, we're talking about making space. And during the winter months and the early spring months, there tends to be a lot of clutter in our homes and a lot of clutter in our lives. If you think about it like a hibernating animal, what they do is they build up all this stuff to help them survive winter. And we're kind of doing the same things. We filled up our homes after the holidays. We might not have been purging things as much as we normally do in the spring and summer months. And so now is a time for us to think about the ways in which we can declutter our lives. For me, I always start with my home. When my home feels cluttered, I feel cluttered. When my home feels uncluttered, I feel uncluttered. And the great irony of that right now is my home is total chaos because we're getting ready to move and everything feels cluttered and crazy. And I feel a little cluttered and crazy, but the good news is there is an opportunity here to fix that by decluttering our physical environments. So this doesn't mean you have to overhaul your whole life and get rid of everything you've ever owned, but maybe you take a little bit of time to declutter, say, your workspace or your kitchen or your family room. Just pick a space and declutter it. And then notice how that makes you feel, not just in that space physically, but emotionally and spiritually too. Because often our physical environments are a reflection of our internal environments. And so we get to then change our external environment, which will then in turn change our internal environment. And it goes vice versa. Changing your internal environment can help your external and so on and so forth. But I do believe that a really easy way to get balance for spring and to think about springtime rituals Ayurvedically is to declutter. So your task is to think about how you can declutter something in your home. But if that doesn't seem like something that really resonates with you, there are other ways of decluttering. One other thing that I like to think about in terms of decluttering is exercise. And now I don't want to get into a weight conversation because everyone's bodies are different, but I think a lot of people do experience a little bit of weight gain in the winter months. And so when springtime comes around and the weather is starting to warm up and the days are a little bit longer, this is a calling for us, not necessarily to lose weight, but for us to move our bodies and declutter our bodies. And that can mean a lot of different things for different people. For me, I tend to lose weight a little bit in the spring just because I am moving more. I feel called to move more. I don't really change my diet that much, but it just seems to be the natural fluctuation in my own body. For other people, they find that moving their bodies helps them declutter in different ways. It makes the joints more mobile. It makes the muscles a little bit more open and elongated. They don't feel so stiff and so tight. So I don't want you to think that decluttering through exercise means you have to lose weight, but what it does is it makes space in our bodies, whatever that healthfully means for each individual. Now, another way that I do think about decluttering, and this is sort of contradictory to what I said earlier. So the kapha dosha sometimes makes us sleep a lot. It makes us feel tired, like we have to take naps. That's great. Naps are really important and we should honor that. But I do think we have to keep that in balance, right? Making sure that we are moving, that we are doing the things that we need to do to take care of ourselves and not getting overrun with too much sleep. But with that in mind, when we're talking about preparing for spring Ayurvedically, it is important to get quality sleep, especially because we're talking about decluttering. And decluttering to me is not quite, but almost synonymous with digestion. And when we sleep, what we're really doing is we're digesting everything. We're digesting the food from the day. We're digesting our experiences from the day. We're digesting our thoughts from the day. And through digestion, what we do is we create space. And so sleep is really, really important. Again, I think it's important to stay balanced with your sleep this time of year. You should honor your body when you're tired, but I do think it's important to do things like get exercise and do energizing practices. But when it's time to get true quality sleep, get quality sleep because it will digest your day. It will help you make space in your life. And look, if I don't get good sleep, nothing goes right the next day. I don't eat as well. I can't think as well. I can't make decisions. I end up not exercising. And eventually what that does is it creates more accumulation. So that's sort of like the subtopics for the declutter category. So to declutter, a few things that you can do: clean out space in your home. You can get some exercise to make space in your body, whatever that means for you, and you can get good sleep. Something else you can do, so kind of getting into point 2 here, is enjoy light foods. And I don't mean like eating less necessarily, and I don't mean eating or talking about like eating low-cal foods. I mean foods that are physically light in nature. So the earth really gives us all the cues that we need for this. If you look at things that grow really well this time of year, it's things like light leafy greens, herbs, foods that are really light in their physical qualities, because the earth is working on her own form of balance. And so she provides for us what we need to stay balanced if we pay attention. And in addition to being light, dry foods are also good this time of year, because if kapha is associated with water, the opposite of water is air. So we want light, airy, dry foods to help us find balance. So according to Banyan Botanicals, and you can check out their website, I'll put it in the show notes, they have a ton of information about what foods you should favor or avoid. And I can't go through all of them, but in terms of, because there's just so many on here, but in terms of fruits, for example, apples are better to eat than, say, bananas. Berries are maybe a better choice than dates. Strawberries might be a better choice than watermelon. And you can kind of see how the foods to favor, they are a little bit lighter and drier in nature than the foods to avoid. Or vegetables, for example. Any leafy greens are good. Broccoli is good. Sprouts, winter squash, cabbage, lettuce. These are all really good choices. To avoid, we'd want to avoid things that are heavy and wet, like avocado, pumpkins, cucumber, those sorts of foods. And again, you can get a full list on banyanbotanicals.com. They have a really comprehensive site full of information, but you can see how these foods are, the foods to favor are lighter and drier in nature than the foods to avoid. Another thing that I like to think about in terms of balancing my diet to prepare for spring is to also eat warm foods too. So if earth and water are often associated with cold temperatures, right? If kapha is associated often with the heaviest, coldest time of year, then foods that are cold can increase the kapha in our own bodies. So eating things like lightly cooked foods, warm food, teas, that sort of stuff can help us balance the kapha dosha a little bit more this time of year. And actually, I sometimes like cold foods, but I can feel it. If I drink a cold smoothie, it makes me feel really congested. It puts out the agni, it puts out the fire. So if we think about that vertical spectrum again, if we have earth, water, then we eventually moving up that spectrum, we also have fire. And what fire does is it burns up all that earth, all that water. It creates heat, which eventually dissipates into air and space. And so when we eat warming foods or lightly cooked foods, we're helping balance that inner fire, that inner agni, which can help us make more space. Another thing to think about in terms of food, and this comes from Banyan Botanicals, is to favor rough qualities over smooth. Again, think about earth, clay, it's smooth. water, it's smooth. But air and space, those qualities don't necessarily associate with smoothness. In fact, they might be a little rougher. If you think about just food, for example, light, airy food like Cheerios, they're kind of rough, right? So we want to favor rough food. Not that I'm telling you to go eat like Cheerios and chips. I mean, I like Cheerios and chips too, don't get me wrong. But I think if we're talking about Ayurveda, we're looking for maybe more nutritional choices than Cheerios and chips. I hope Cheerios doesn't get mad at me for saying that. I do like to put Cheerios in my yogurt sometimes. I get it. As Banyan Botanical says, there's a reason that fruits and vegetables are sometimes called roughage. So their fiber structure gives them a rough quality, and it's those foods that tend to grow this time of year. So these foods are often easier to digest when cooked. So going back to that Agni, we don't want things that are really, really hard to digest or that would put out the fire. So we want to not overdo raw foods and make sure we're eating things that are rough, like broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, leafy greens. Some beans are good choices too. And they are really nice as a sort of counterpart for kapha's smooth, oily, cold nature. So just something else to think about in terms of your food choices, rough over smooth. The bad news is when we are talking about foods to eat for kapha dosha, we're supposed to let go of sweet food. So the sweet taste is cold, it's heavy, it's kapha provoking. So it's a really good time of year for us to think about taking out refined sugar and really sweet foods. This one's really hard for me. I have a major sweet tooth. So I'm not saying that you need to just take it all out completely because that's not realistic. I wouldn't do that. I need a piece of dark chocolate or it's going to get crazy. So, but have a piece of dark chocolate versus a bowl of ice cream or something like that, just so you can really honor and start getting a little more intentional Ayurvedically with the things that you're putting in your body. Also, sour foods aren't great for the kapha dosha, which is not a big deal for me. I don't really like sour foods that much. But things like vinegar, green grapes, grapefruit, not the best choices right now. Okay, last but not least, one other thing that I want to talk about before we part ways here is the kitchari cleanse. So a kitchari cleanse is a mono diet cleanse, and I really like kitchari cleanses because I can't fast. My dosha does not really allow me to do that. I get too frustrated. It does not serve my body well at all. But a mono diet cleanse allows you to eat as much as you want. It's just really bland food that meets all of your nutritional needs. It's just really easy to digest, and it's going to help you sort of reset your taste buds, reset your digestive system. So the kitchari diet cleanse, it's nice to do at springtime, really at any change of season. I like to do it at the new year. In fact, last year I did a 3-day kitchari cleanse at the new year and I blogged about it. So I'm going to repost those blogs for you to check out because even though it was at the new year, they're still totally applicable right now. But a kitchari cleanse is a 3, 5, or 7-day cleanse that consists of a dish called kitchari. And kitchari is simply rice, kitchari spices. Usually it's made with some sort of like dal, like a lentil or other bean. I have a hard time finding the beans that I need for it here in Wilmington. You can get anything in the world online, but I have used split red lentils for it in the past. And you top it with seasonally appropriate or dosha appropriate vegetables. And you eat as much of it as you want for every meal, every snack, for 3, 5, or 7 days. And what I really, really like about kitchari is going back to this concept of decluttering. It really allows us to declutter our diets. I know this sounds crazy. It will help you declutter your emotions. There is so much emotional stuff that comes into the foods that we eat that when we eliminate all those foods, we have to face the actual emotions themselves. And I remember, I think I blogged about this in last year. I think it was day 2. I was like a total emotional disaster. I was crying. Everything was wrong. Then day 3, it was like I was high on life. It was crazy. And I felt really good on day 3, but it's because all that emotional stuff was released. So it makes space in our bodies, in our diets, in our emotions. It helps us sort of reset our taste buds to get back to those seasonally appropriate foods and to not crave things that maybe don't serve us. It helps us regulate that internal Agni. So it really does, it's like a one-stop shop for preparing Ayurvedically. And what's cool, it doesn't have to be done just at springtime. Spring's a really great time for kitchari cleansing because we are talking about, making space and decluttering and all that stuff during spring, but it can be done at the change of any season or really any time in life that you feel like you need a reset. So I'll post the kitchari recipe in the show notes so you can check that out, and I'll have links for where you can get the kitchari spices, but that's a really great way for you to prepare for spring Ayurvedically. Okay, so let's talk about these three, just recap them one more time really quickly. So number one, declutter, make physical space, get good exercise that serves your body, and get good sleep. Number two, eat light foods, favor rough, favor light, favor dry, favor warm. Try not to eat too many sweets. So we want to use our foods to help us increase our inner fire. And then number three, try a kitchari cleanse. Maybe 3 days just to start, a 5-7 day, or some people do more than 7 days. I've only done 3-day kitchari cleanses, but a 3-day kitchari cleanse, it'll do the job. It does get a little bit boring, like your 8th meal of kitchari, you're like, God damn it. Something else to eat, but it's totally manageable, totally feasible, and I think you're going to feel great after doing it. So those are my 3 tips for preparing for spring Ayurvedically. I'd love to know what you do to prepare for spring, whether it's Ayurvedically or through your yoga practice or any other rituals that you have. So you can share those with me on Instagram at Dharma Drops Podcast, and we can build a list of ideas to prepare for spring together. But otherwise, that's all I have for you today. I hope you're having a great spring. I know it's a little bit funky this year with the pandemic, but just because we're stuck inside doesn't mean we can't have springtime rituals. In fact, it's a great time to build new rituals because what the fuck else are we going to do right now? So don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to Dharma Drops Podcast on whatever app you're listening to the podcast on. You can follow all the Dharma Drops shenanigans on Instagram at Dharma Drops Podcast, and everything is available at dharmadropspodcast.com. I'll be back next week with another mini drop and a full-length episode, and I cannot wait to see you next time. Until we meet again, friends. Bye.